my business is home modifications. Do a presentation today on things to look out for in your house to make them more accessible and safer for you. Bear with me, I've had a lot of coffee this morning, so I'm ready to go. um, okay, so aging in place remodeling, as it's commonly referred to, is better known by the technical term universal design. And universal design essentially means the remodel or the design of your home has been done so that homeowners of any physical capability can use the space. So if you have no issues and you're completely ambulatory or you use a wheelchair, your home will serve you for the length of time you'd like to be there. This is what we do. It's 100% of what we do at my business. So as you can imagine, a lot of that means problem areas like bathtubs and walk-in or roll-in showers. But there's also things to look out for that a lot of folks aren't aware of. So I'm going to point out those things room by room in this presentation. So there are 6 tenets of universal design, and they are equitable use. So as I said, they can be used by people of all physical capabilities. Simple and intuitive design. Perceptible information, which means as you approach the fixture or the room, you should be able to understand exactly how to use it without having to read a manual or something like that, as I'm sure a lot of us run into. Tolerance for error, so reducing things like clutter, carpets to avoid disasters like falls and things like that. And low physical effort. How can we design the space so that it may be used with the least physical effort possible? The areas to address, which we'll talk about today, are entrances and exits. You'd be surprised, a lot of the times folks will have completed a major remodel of their home. They'll come home from somewhere like a long-term rehabilitation stay, and they can't get through the front door. And it's something that's been overlooked by homeowners or contractors who maybe don't think about these things. Bathrooms, bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, and stairways. First, entrances and exits. So we can keep going to the next slide, sorry. The first option here, which is pretty common, you see these a lot, they're referred to as semi-permanent ramps. Typically they're made from stainless steel or aluminum. The advantage of these products is that they can be installed very quickly. There are companies out there. There's a national company that was founded in Boston called AmRamp, and they produce these in sections so that they can be configured to all types of different shapes off the shelf. They can usually get there within a few days, and they can be rented or purchased. So these are a lower cost alternative to something more permanent with footings. And it's just one of the many options. Next are permanent ramps. Here's one we did in Waltham. Obviously, the advantage to permanent ramps is that you can make them very attractive. If you have a deck at the house made from cedar or a composite material, you can match that and make the ramp an extension of what your home already looks like. These projects take a little bit longer. They require things like footings, structural diagrams, and building permits. So if you're in a pinch, a semi-permanent ramp's probably a great option, but with a little bit of planning, you can make them look fantastic. Next are vertical platform lifts. This is essentially just an elevator, a residential elevator. Uh, You know, it's important to follow the building code for these. Massachusetts makes it a little bit more difficult than other states do for VPLs because you have to follow elevator mechanic code. But these products are more or less off the shelf, and companies like AmRamp and some of these others can be at your home pretty quickly to install these. These are typically around the same expense as a very long or custom ramp, but they're a great situation like this one that we did in Newton. It was a duplex with two separate entrances, and they're right on the main drag in Newtonville, so getting a ramp to span the whole yard of the driveway wasn't an option. This is great. These can be used in garages too. If you have a single bay garage, it's a great option. I actually have a video on the next slide of what that looks like. Here's me taking a joyride on a VPL. You can see here there's a fold down ramp. So these options are fantastic too if maybe your spouse is coming home in a wheelchair, and instead of a 40-foot long ramp that you have to push up and clean off snow through the winter, you have a VPL, and it's a very quick transfer into the house. The next area of concern, and this is the one we get the most calls about, are bathrooms, which is logical because a good number of falls actually occur in the bathroom. The things we want to incorporate into our bathroom remodels are low curbs or no curbs, a roll-in shower like the one you see here, grab bars in as many areas as we can fit them, handheld showers, so that if you'd like to bathe while seated, or if someone's being bathed under a caregiver assistance, it's important to have a shower on a hose. And this is an important one not to overlook, are slip-resistant materials. So a lot of folks like the look of polished marble on the floor. Not a great option when we're talking about universal design. So all different types of bathrooms that you can incorporate. Here's one. It was a small half bathroom in Waltham. There was no space that we could take from other rooms for this woman that we were doing the remodel for. So we decided to create a wet bath. And I couldn't even get the bathroom was so tight, I couldn't get everything in one picture. This is actually, so what we did was we waterproofed the entire room. We put a floor drain in the corner of the room. And now this was big enough for her to return home, take her showers under caregiver assistance with plenty of turning radius within the room in her wheelchair. And that's how we got it done for her. So that's called a wet bath. Curbless showers, if you have a little bit more space, it's the same theory, but maybe you remove your alcove tub, and we take a number of steps to waterproof the substrate, but we can create a barrier-free entry. And that's called no threshold, roll-in, curbless shower. Those are the standard terms. Inserts are the same theory. These projects usually move a bit quicker because they have there are companies that provide fiberglass pans that are prepared for wheelchairs. So you can remove the tub, complete all your plumbing, and then install the insert in a matter of, say, a week versus a more extensive project. This is a great option for those of us on a budget. And the last option is low threshold. A lot of alterations that we may make are not, you're going to have to drag me out of this house. They are, okay, I'd like to get another 5, 10 years out of this property. If I'm in a wheelchair, I'll call Michelle and I'll assess what I'll do at that point. but in the meantime, a low threshold shower maybe on the second floor is a great option. Okay, so bedrooms and living rooms are actually where the vast majority of falls occur. And so folks don't look at bedrooms and living rooms as something that they need to make alterations to or to invest in for universal design or fall prevention. But there are a number of things to look out for here. First, in these rooms, we always recommend including a 5-foot or 60-inch turning radius somewhere within the room, so that if we're using a walker or a wheelchair, and again, we're preparing for the worst here, then we'll have enough room to turn under assistance or by ourselves. So that's an important consideration. The things to look out for in the room are lighting. You know, a lot of homes now, if you walk into a new construction home or a home that's been remodeled recently, there's recessed lights everywhere, okay? It's really important. You know, I'm told as we age, our vision becomes frustrating, and the easiest and simplest way to fix that is, or to assist with that, is to add lighting, and it's really an inexpensive process. We want to adjust the heights to couches and beds, and we want to provide things to grab. There's different grab bar options that I'll cover here in the next slide. A couple more things to look out for. So in bedrooms and living rooms, we want to provide open shelving where possible, so that to reduce confusion, but also if you're investing in lighting within the room, you can create kind of a open, accessible closet. And so this is a major request that we see quite a bit. We can do things like raise outlets, so that if we're vacuuming the bedroom floor, we're not having to reach down to the floor. It's a lot simpler to use. Or if we're plugging our phone in next to the bed at night, we're not having to crawl under the bed to plug it in, right? And lift chairs and beds. You know, we're watching the Red Sox at night. The game lasts 5.5 hours. And a lift chair might be really helpful in the living room. And then lastly is secure flooring. We want to eliminate shag carpets, throw rugs, runners, things like this. Next is kitchens. So we deal with a ton of customers who love to cook, okay? And they think that as soon as they have a mobility concern, they lose that ability. It's not the case. There's technology out there between appliances and universal design methods that can give us that ability for as long as we'd like. The things to look out for are reachable appliances. So instead of having maybe a dishwasher with a bottom rack that's about this high off the ground, they make drawer style dishwashers. We can lift dishwashers, but we try to put all of our appliances in this eye to waste area so that we can use them with low effort. We want to have open space for seating in areas like under the sink or under your stovetop, so that we can be either in a perch chair or a wheelchair while we're washing dishes and preparing food. Varying counter heights, so that you can decide if you want to chop your vegetables sitting down or standing up, be helpful. And some safety appliances, which I'll show you some examples of. Here's a kitchen we did in Wayland. You can see right off the bat here, we have an open area beneath the stovetop here. This gentleman, he loved to cook, but he was in a wheelchair, so we opened the areas underneath the sink and the stovetop for him. These cabinets are also custom made. They have higher toe kicks, so that if we are in a wheelchair, the cabinets will be higher off the ground and easier to access. But they also, if you're in a chair, your feet are up a lot higher, so you avoid damage to the cabinetry. Here's another angle, but okay, so this is unique. So we have a raised, this is actually the dishwasher. It's accessed from the top. And so the sink is here. They can, this gentleman could load his dishes while seating at the sink. And it was a huge benefit for him. Side opening ovens so that we're not having to reach over a hot oven door is important. And this was an aftermarket addition that we made. We put a cutting board beneath the side opening oven so that he could transfer heavy plates, his Thanksgiving turkey, onto this and pivot before he gets it onto the countertop. And here's a look at that. This company called Fisher Paykel, they make this dishwasher, and it's a, I always show this photo, so it's a popular request. Next are stairways, okay? Things to look out for on every stairway. We want to add handrails to each side of the stairs. If a lot of us have older homes, like earlier than maybe the 1950s, if you have a stairwell, you probably have a really beautiful, ornate handrail that they would never take the time to build these days. It's great. Problem is, it's on one side of the stairs, and it's probably 28 inches above tread. If you develop a dominant side, okay, that handrail might serve you on the way up or the way down, but it could make the reverse trip much more difficult. So the first thing I always look for, if someone's bedroom or an important room is on the second stairs, we add handrails to both sides to accommodate that dominant side. Next is get rid of, again, runners, things like that on stairs. Either use an additive to a polyurethane to make the steps less slippery, or put on some kind of tread guard and reduce the chance for falls, okay? We also go back to lighting. This is a neglected area in the house. People think it's just a stairwell. I don't spend any time here, but this helps reduce falls and confusion at night especially. So try to incorporate as much natural or mechanical lighting as possible. And then last, we've all looked at stair lifts. We all know what stair lifts are. An important note about them, every staircase is different, okay? So if you have any turn or anything aside from just a straight shot stair lift, it's a custom project. So if you are considering a curved stair lift like the one you see here, you need to leave yourself 2 or 3 months of planning before the companies can actually install them. A lot of people think, okay, I'll give Stana or one of these stair lift companies a call after I have a stint in a rehabilitation, and then they're months without access to the second floor. So it's just something to put in your notes. Now, in all areas of the house, we want to address lighting. Home Depot and Lowe's in the lighting stores have gotten really good about marking the color of their lights nowadays. What was really common for a long time was this soft or warm white. The problem is it has a lot of yellow and orange color in it. And if you're having vision problems, that can enhance or actually make vision more difficult because your vision is already yellowed. So that can heighten the problem, right? So we want to look for bright or cool white and daylight options. It's whiter, brighter light. Next, I mentioned this a couple times, but secure flooring, okay? People are very reluctant to give up that $2,000 rug they purchased for their living room. But if it's a tripping hazard, then it either needs to be secured to the floor or repurposed. Okay. Keep going here. Yep, that's a no-go. All right, now everywhere that we are, we want to add something to grab. This is a shower we did. You can see we've installed grab bars, but there are a lot of companies that produce good-looking things like toilet paper holders, soap shelves like the one you see here that have a dual function as a grab bar. And they look nice too. You can get them in gold finishes, you can get them in chrome finishes, anything that you like, and it really fits with the bathroom. I can't tell you how many houses I walk into where folks have towel bars or a toilet paper holder that they're using as their primary grab bar in the room. It's really dangerous. They're not secured, they're not easy to grab, they're not fastened to the wall correctly. You can replace them with attractive fixtures that are meant for that purpose. Michelle and I talked about this earlier. This is called a super pole, okay? It's a floor to ceiling grab bar. And, you know, we all spend probably too much time in front of the TV, right? Or on a couch in the living room, and it's a big open space. There's no logical place to put a handrail or a grab bar. But if you're without another option, there are options like a super pole, which can give you something to grab in the middle of the room. Maybe, you know, if your bedroom door's there and your couch is here and there's no hallway in between, you can break up that run with something like this. Okay, so there's a lot of options out there. The last couple things here. So lever handles on doors, faucets, things like that. You know, some of you may have arthritis. Grabbing, turning knobs on old shower faucets, things like that, is probably pretty difficult. So consider lever handles anywhere you can get them. Pocket doors are great if you can fit them in because they reduce the amount of space taken up for the swing of the door. But also, if you're ever using a wheelchair, they're much simpler to open and close. And lastly is reduced clutter. This is a blueprints for a project we did where we incorporated things like pocket doors everywhere we could, but we also worked with a designer to make sure that when we furnished the place, we didn't have plants everywhere and tripping hazards and rugs. So it's just, it's a sacrifice we've got to make, but it's really important to reduce clutter where we can. Are there any questions for me?
Put on the stairwell, you know, to prevent slipping. What about if you do have a marble floor in the bathroom? Are there products that you can put on that?
There are products, yeah. I can give you some information on this. So they have a roll-on floor sealer that is completely transparent, so you won't see it. It may reduce the shine of a marble floor, but it, you know, there's paint additives and there's a company called, I think it's called Shark's Tooth, where you add it to the paint, poly, and you can roll it also onto bathroom floors.
Not gritty feeling, but
Yeah, a gritty feeling is a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Instead of a stair lift, what about inside elevators like outside?
Yep. That's an option as well. It's a pretty expensive process. Yeah. It's a lot more than the stair lift. You know, there are a lot of situations, if there's not room, especially at the top of the stair lift, for it to return into a hallway or away from a bedroom door, I try to advise my clients away from it because you're getting on and off a chair at the top of the stairs. Okay. So they have products and they will sell you a straight stair lift that ends at the top of the stairs. But if you're willing to make a more significant investment, you can remove that stairwell and put an elevator shaft in that space.
Just a note.
Yes.
What price range?
Okay, okay.
What price range, like are, the chair lifts? I know there's a range.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mentioned, so she asked what price range are the stair lifts and the elevators in? There are companies that do that specifically. So I don't do stair lifts. I could refer to other companies. But from what I understand, straight stair lifts are typically going to be in the $4,000 to $7,000 range. The curved stair lifts, which take a couple months to get, which are always custom, I believe are closer to the $12,000 to $15,000 range. And that obviously can go up as well, depending on the length and shape. Yes.
To comment on that, we had an elderly relative living with us at one point, and we installed a stair lift. And it was about $5,000 at the time, but after the relative passed, the company from whom we bought it actually bought it back from us at a fairly reasonable percentage. So the net cost over the life of our usage of the thing was relatively affordable.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are companies so I think everyone heard him because he's got a great voice, but there's a rule of thumb too for renting semi-permanent wheelchair ramps. Okay, those aluminum ramps that I showed. Typically, they say it will pay for itself if you plan to rent it for greater than 6 months. Okay, so that's something to consider as well. But there are, especially with some of these specialized products, buyback programs like the one you suggested. Thank you very much.
Porch. Good afternoon. How much time do I have? Says you're good. I could go forever. I'm Michelle. I am the older sister of a company called Two Sisters Senior Living Advisors. My sister and I are in our 14th year, and we work with people who are wanting to create the future that there will be most comfortable, and we help them understand how to do that. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to stay at home. Thank you, Brian, for your presentation. That was really helpful in terms of the logistics of the home. I'm going to start with an example. I'm a big analogy person. Can everyone hear me okay? I was told that my font is too small on my slides, so if you're mad at me, that's okay, as long as you can hear what I'm saying. So we're going to go on a road trip. Let's say we're going to leave from here and we're going to go to Denver. But we don't have a map or an atlas or a GPS or anything else that's going to help us get there. And we don't know how much gas it's going to take or how much it's going to cost to fill up our gas tank. Are we going to get to Denver? I probably wouldn't. You might. We might, but we're going to spend a lot more money than we would need to. We're going to take a lot of wrong turns. It's going to take a lot longer than we thought. So before we set out on our road trip to Denver, we can map it out and we can figure out how much gas we need, and we can figure out the price of gas and how much do we have the resources to get to Denver. Kind of an important thing before you set out on a trip. If we do have the resources, then fantastic, and enjoy your trip and see you in Denver. If you don't have the resources, your car won't make it, you don't have enough money for gas, any number of reasons, then do you want to try to get to Denver and end up like in Western Pennsylvania? Which, I mean, it's nice there, but it's not. Or would you rather figure out a different destination before you set out on the road? Most people that I know of just set out on the road. Your goal is to stay home. Great. My goal is to go to Denver. Great. Before I just set out and plan to stay home, I need to have a plan. I need a map. I need to know how much it's going to cost. Otherwise, my plan to stay home is just going to end up in me being somewhere I don't want to be. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Our common concerns for staying home. If I had a crystal ball, I talk about my fake crystal ball all the time. The costs involved in staying home, assessing the situation. I insert the word successful. You don't want to just stay home. You want to stay home successfully. Not successfully looks like going to the hospital and then rehab and then home and hospital and rehab and home and hospital and rehab. That is not staying home successfully. That's not working. So we're going to talk about how to think about what if this happens? Is my plan going to continue to work? And then I'm going to offer you some help and resources. Next slide. So I'm going to not try to repeat Brian's presentation, but what are some of the common concerns that people have about staying home? And this is just based on what I hear. So a lot of the information I'm providing here is based on my interactions with people over the last 14 years. It's not something I read in a book. I may not want to actually admit that, but so stairs are becoming an issue. That's one of the biggest things that people, when I talk to them, the only bathrooms on the second floor. There's a number of reasons why stairs become a concern. I actually had a client, there's a couple, and the wife was for a number of reasons limited to the second floor to her bedroom, and these people were in their late 90s and still successfully living at home, and the husband was preparing most of the food, and so he'd have a hot bowl of soup and he would set it down on a stair, he would hold on, and he would go up the stair. He would pick up the soup, put it on the next stair, hold on. And this was how he was getting his meals to his wife. And their plan is to stay home. They are just one small incident away from not being able to stay home. So doing the things that Brian mentioned, augmenting your home to make it safer, is really important to stay home. I talked to a woman actually yesterday, and she was telling me that I got mad at her because she has balance issues and she doesn't use a walker. And I'm on Zoom. And she doesn't use a walker. She says, I find things that work as a walker. Well, my job is to help you plan to stay at home. If you want to stay at home, you need to do everything you can not to fall and not to end up in the hospital and in rehab and then come back again. So stairs becoming an issue, frequent falls, housekeeping, bill paying, medication management, isolation became a much bigger issue from COVID and still is. So refusing care. You may want to stay home. You may want to keep your spouse home. But for a number of reasons, people get there and they are resistant to care. They don't allow a caregiver to help them in the bath or shower or to get dressed. Home isn't going to work. I talk to people all the time whose loved ones keep firing the home care aides. And they can do that. And then they're at home and they don't have the support they need. Next slide. Here's my imaginary crystal ball. If we could see the future, we need to ask some questions. If there's a diagnosis, if someone has a diagnosis of something like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, my dad has Parkinson's, it's important to pay attention to that. We can't predict exactly how it's going to play out, but we do know with some certainty that we can expect certain challenges. So with Alzheimer's, for example, people want to stay home, but if somebody's going to be exit seeking or wandering, no matter how much you want to keep someone home, it just may not be a possibility. we're going to talk about costs here in a minute, but 24-hour around the clock care is really expensive. If somebody is prone to wandering or might get lost if they do wander out, they need supervision 24 hours a day. They cannot be left alone, and you cannot lock them in. It's unfortunate that I do talk to people probably weekly that have some sort of locking device on the door to keep their loved one from getting outside, and that is a huge fire risk, not just for your loved one, but for you as well. There are some magnet. You probably can speak to this too. There's some magnet things, and there are things that you can put in your home to help a loved one who is prone to wandering, but you really need a backup plan because home doesn't work. You have to budget for the assistance you need. So we're talking about some of the costs for augmenting your home. That's just the first step. If you're going to put an elevator, I forget what you called it, VPL. If you're going to put a VPL, fancy, in your home and you're going to spend, I don't know, a lot, what happens if you can't stay home still, right? You put all this money. I wonder what that is. I can be louder. Um, Vacuuming or like the sky is falling. I'm not sure. Uh, where was I? BPL. So, and I counter this more with stair lifts because honestly, I have never seen a VPL. People spend a lot of money. They put a stair lift in and then they can't stay home for some other reason. So they just spent all this money. It's like going to Denver without the map. You just went towards Miami for a while. And now you spent all this money and you're not where you want to be. So I'm not discouraging people from using stair lifts or getting VPLs, but consider everything else before you go and invest money in a project like that for your home. So logistically, a support system is needed to stay home. If you do not have one, you can create one. There are councils on aging, geriatric care managers. There are a number of people, but home care is a hard thing to coordinate. You have an agency, probably. I'm not an advocate for hiring privately. We can have a conversation about that another time. But you have an agency if you need care to get up, to get dressed, to go to the bathroom, and the caregiver calls out. What's going to happen? Are you going to be coordinating with them to try to get them to send somebody? A good home care company will send someone in. A great home care company, if no one's there, the owner will show up. And so that's important, is what does your support system look like? How are you going to get food? How are you going to maintain the home? There's a number of things that, again, it just takes a lot of coordination. It's something that most people can't do all by themselves. So yeah, I mentioned that support system. And then what's your goal? I can't tell you how many times I talk to somebody and their goal is to stay home. This happened to my family. So my dad, like I said, he has Parkinson's, and my mom, and they were living in a condo. And Parkinson's does cause a little bit of impulsivity, and he was a little impulsive before. He decided to climb up a 10-foot aluminum ladder to hang a picture above a credenza. And fortunately for him, when the ladder fell over, he only broke his ankle because it could have been a lot worse. But their goal was to stay home. My mom wanted to stay home. But my dad, and there was like a 2-3 week period where he couldn't he couldn't use crutches because of the Parkinson's, and he couldn't use a walker. So he was in a wheelchair, and my mom couldn't help him get in and out. So we had a home care company come in for 24 hours for a couple weeks. And let me tell you, my mother hated it. Her whole plan was to stay home. My dad couldn't care either way. But having someone in her home all the time literally almost, okay, I guess figuratively, almost drove her crazy. She felt like she had to entertain them all the time. She felt like she was uncomfortable if they were just sitting around, so she would try to have conversation. she's introverted. She doesn't want to have she doesn't want someone in her home all the time. So that she would try to find something for them to be helpful and do the dishes and put things away, but then she could never find anything. I mean, there was like so many things, so many reasons. Some of the caregivers were great. Some of them were really annoying. There was one girl that just sat there with her coat on the whole time. It's not as everything it's cracked up to be for many people. So it's the kind of thing that, yeah, the goal may be to stay at home, but when you think about all of the things, home may not actually be what you want. Um, okay, next slide. So there are a lot of costs involved in staying home, and in most cases, it ends up being more expensive than it would to move out into a residential community, a senior living community. So you got your rent or mortgage. Maybe you own your house outright. That's great. Homeowners insurance, real estate taxes, all your utilities, groceries, medication, transportation, home maintenance. You're already familiar. You're already paying all those things. So what does care cost? If you don't need it now, it's pretty easy to say, oh, well, it's not that much. A few hours of care, I can manage that. Next slide. He's intuitive. So home care right now, on average, is about $40 an hour. What's tricky is you can't just get an hour. You can't just get 2 hours in most circumstances, especially since COVID. It's driven by staffing. So in order to keep good caregivers, they need to be able to offer them a certain number of hours. Otherwise, they're going to lose the caregiver to another company. So they put in a 4 or 6 hour minimum. Some have 8. So what that means is if you just need a little bit of help in the morning, you're going to have a caregiver there for 4 hours. And you have to pay for that 4 hours because that they have to staff it that way. So if you're looking at 4 to 6 hours minimum, then you're looking at an additional $4,800 a month on top of, now math isn't my strong suit, so if anybody's checking my math, but roughly $4,800 a month on top of all those other expenses for 4 to 6 hours of home care per day, all in one section. So if you need help to get up and get dressed, you also need help to get undressed and get to bed. So now you're looking at 8 hours, 4 in the morning and 4 in the evening. It gets expensive really quick. 24-hour care at $40 an hour is about $29,000 a month on top of your home expenses. I do work with a number of people that can make that work, but that's how much gas you need to get to Denver. If you don't have enough money or resources to get to Denver, should you try to stay home? Because something might happen and you might not get to Denver. We all, in fact, everyone I've ever met, including myself, we all want to go to sleep one day and not wake up. Hopefully many, many days in the future, but that is not common. Most of us are going to need help with at least one activity of daily living before the end of our life. And so wanting to stay home is not a plan. Understanding how to stay home will make it possible for you. Understanding how to get to Denver is what's going to make it possible for you. So knowing that it could cost $30,000 a month just for the care, if in a worst case scenario that did happen, what would you like? If you can't stay home, what are the other options? And so before I move on, I just want to mention that home care is private pay. There are some subsidies available. You can contact the Council on Aging or your local ASAP area service access point, and I'm going to give you all that stuff too, to learn about some income based support, but it's not ever enough to stay home. There's no around the clock care in your home that isn't private pay. So it's expensive. Long-term care insurance is considered private pay. The aid and attendance, if you are a veteran or you are the surviving spouse of a veteran, there is a pension through the VA called aid and attendance. Aid and attendance is, again, specifically for wartime veterans, which there's a lot of like little stipulations that I can point you in the direction of, but I'm not fully aware of myself. But I think for a veteran and their spouse, if the spouse is also dependent, can get something like $2,400 a month towards the cost of home care or assisted living. The surviving spouse, I think it's around 13 or 1400. I should have looked this up before I came and talked about, but it's a significant amount. It's definitely going to help offset the cost. You may not qualify now, either because you don't have the care needs or because of the budget, but there's not the look back period is less than 5 years, so you can get qualified to get this money to help offset the cost. The sooner you do, the more effective it is, obviously. Next slide. So how can you help a loved one stay at home, or how can you stay at home? I want to be honest that sometimes you can't. There are many, many circumstances under which the goal is to stay home, but it is not achievable. I may want to get to Denver with all of my heart, but I just can't. So how do we make the best of a situation that isn't ideal? Next slide. We're going to assess the situation. So before we set out to Denver, let's see if we can get there. We're going to take a look at the care needs and the safety. So that has, actually, I'm pointing over there, but that's not where I want to point right now. So care needs and safety. Again, if there's a diagnosis of some kind, then we can make some predictions. Otherwise, I think we kind of know intuitively what we fear might happen in our home. That little internal voice that's talking to us, listen to that, and because it's telling you what safety concerns that you have about staying home. So looking at if, like I was talking about that woman who had equilibrium problems, she's fine, she's independent, she's living at home, but the writing is on the wall that she's struggling and she's falling a lot. And so her care needs, her safety has become a big concern for her. And so she's choosing not to stay home because she would need around the clock care and she doesn't want to spend that money. Finances, most people cannot afford $30,000 a month, 24-hour home care on top of the home. There are some, but most people cannot. Most of my clients, when it gets to be 6-8 hours of care per day, that they just don't have it. And there are products you can use like reverse mortgages and home equity lines of credit, but those you have to have your eyes wide open. They're not bad resources, but I talk to people all the time that think it's their solution and then they end up in a situation they don't want to be in. So finances, the suitability of the current environment. That's what I want to point to Brian. But yeah, is your home able to support you? If not, then how can you make it that way? And your support system, do you have someone to come in if your home care company doesn't show up, or call them and give them a piece of their mind? Do you have someone to bring you food, to cook, to bring you to the doctor, to check on you, to do all of the, help you manage your medications? If you have the support system in place, good. And then what are your preferences? And I put a little star there because, again, I talk to almost everybody I talk to, their preference is to stay home. But when it actually comes time to have care in your home, that isn't what they really wanted. They're not happy with it. So it may be worth kind of thinking forward to what you want. Next slide. So I'm an optimist. I can't help it. like it's people, I don't know if you've heard that there's a new term called toxic positivity, like people that are just like positive all the time. I've been accused of that. But I want to be realistic, and the way that we can be realistic is by asking some what if scenarios. So, and we don't want to do this too much because I have an 11-year-old. I drive myself nuts asking all the what if questions. But if you're looking at wanting to stay home, you can ask yourself, what if mobility becomes an issue? What if I do need a wheelchair or I do need a walker? And I'm going to call that guy over there. If I can't drive, how am I going to get the things? Right? Like we can order groceries and we can have things delivered, but like there needs to be a plan. I have very poor vision problems myself, and the time has already come where I will not drive at night any more than like the little town I live in, especially if it's raining and I'm in my mid-40s. That is going to be a problem for me as I get older. Of course, I'm hoping the technology and the medical to be able to fix it. But that's something I need to consider. What if I couldn't drive? What are the ramifications of that? Who's going to drive me? Now we have Uber and things like that, but still no longer maintaining the home, cleaning, changing light bulbs, mowing the lawn. How are those things going to be done? I have a handyman. You can get a handyman. One way to do it. Medication errors. This is really common. Again, visually, like I take my medications and I have to be really careful because like if I can't necessarily see the difference. So it's not just forgetful and not messing up your medications, but medication errors are a huge, so who's going to help you? If you are concerned about taking your medications, who can you have help you? A lot of times it's your kids or other family members will lay out a med box, but if you don't have that, you can hire somebody. There are a number of things, but you need to think these through. Here's a big one, a really big one. If you are the well spouse or caregiver, if you are the caregiver and well spouse for somebody who needs help, you need a plan. If something happens to you, you need a plan for your loved one. So many caregivers, spouses are doing a really good job. They're staying home, they're managing their loved one's care, everything is going as ideally as it possibly could. And then they end up having a fall or an illness and they end up in the hospital or rehab. And these are a lot of the crisis calls that I get from adult children that need to find something for their mom right away because their dad was the primary caregiver and he's going to be in rehab for the next couple months, something like that. So if there are two of you, have a plan. What if this isn't going to work? That's a really, really important thing. If nothing else, you walk away from this, and Michelle told me to have a plan. If wandering is a concern, if caregivers aren't available. So there's 4 things that we look at to help somebody figure out where they want to receive care or how they want to receive care. One is their care needs. Again, without being able to predict the future, we can assume some basic things. You might need help with things like getting dressed or taking a shower for balance reasons. Those tend to be medication management, the first few things that people need. So care needs, we look at our budget, our location preferences. Where do we want to be? If we're not going to stay home, do we want to stay in Sherborn? Or we open to moving closer to Boston where our kids live? Did I say Sherborn right? Is it? I say, all these like towns, like at least I'm gonna say Worcester. I am from Massachusetts, by the way, but I'm on the South Shore. And preferences. So sometimes the preferences we can't take into consideration, but I have a client right now that's a vegetarian and she wants to move into a community that doesn't just scrape the meat off the plate. She wants a vegetarian menu, which is really hard to find. But that's a preference that it's important and we can't overlook it. So these are the 4 things that we take into account when we're looking at where we want to be. And if those things can be met at home. So I'm proud of this slide. I really like it. Sometimes I use the seatbelt slide, but it's better to have a plan in place and never need it than to need a plan and not have one. So you can call me and we can do a consultation and we can spend all this time and come up with a plan, and I won't be mad at you if you don't use it. So it's like having a fire extinguisher. I like the seatbelt analogy too. We don't put a seatbelt on with the intention of going out and getting into a car accident. But if we do get into a car accident, it will minimize the impact of whatever happens. That's the plan. And so we don't plan to go to a nursing home. We don't plan to go to an assisted living necessarily because that's what we want. But having a plan in place for if that were to occur, what is the best case scenario for myself? It's like putting a seatbelt on. I was going to break out into song, but you don't want to do that. So here's the breakdown in costs. Here's why home care is, people think it's more reasonable. They look at the cost of assisted living, like, what? Oh my God. The cost of a nursing home is even more. The cost of staying home 4 to 6 hours, 8 hours, you have to decide where your threshold is. How much can you pay for home care before it becomes more expensive? This analogy is 24 hours. So 24-hour awake home care, usually, well, always in shifts. So 2, 12 and 12, or maybe 3 8-hour shifts, but the caregiver's awake. And if they are not, then you should fire them because you're paying them to be awake. A live-in caregiver is somebody that lives in your home and they have to be given, I think it's 5.5 hours of consecutive time to sleep. So you have to be able to manage for that amount of time without a caregiver, or family members sometimes come in and fill in. Here's another thing, if you're going to take anything away from me. Do not hire a live-in caregiver privately without doing due diligence. Because if you have somebody who's living in your home and you don't like it, it's not working out, and you fire this person, you may also have to evict them. If somebody has their primary residence in your home, you can't just kick them out. So the agencies, what most of them do is they'll staff for a caregiver on 4 days and another for 3, or a caregiver on 1 week and another the next. It's not somebody living full time, but caregiver matching is the focus. If you have somebody living in your home, the goal is to find somebody that you are okay living with and not a caregiver. There are other things. There needs to be a bedroom and things like that. Nursing homes, $15,000 a month, $500 a day on average. People don't realize that. If you do not have the money for that, you can go on to you will go on to Mass Health, and Medicaid, Mass Health will pay for your stay in a nursing home. So everyone, like, you won't be homeless and without care. But if you run out of money, a nursing home is where you need to receive care. If you need to go into a nursing home and you are not on Mass Health, it's going to cost you $15,000 a month. I can help figure this out. If somebody is private pay, I can almost always keep them out of a nursing home, almost. But assisted living communities, by comparison, I think they've gone up even since I made the slide. $8,500, $9,000 a month. That includes your apartment. It includes all your food, all your utilities, except for phone, cable. Most people don't even have landlines anymore. They just use their cell phone. It includes housekeeping. They come in and strip your bed, wash your linens, make your bed again. Personal laundry sometimes included. There's a lot of, most of your household expenses go away when you move into an assisted living. And the cost for around the clock supervision, you can see, is the least expensive of any of the options. So your plan may be to stay at home, and I'm not here to tell you it shouldn't be, but I do want you to have a backup plan. Look at some of these options. They're a lot better than I think you well. They're a lot better than many people think they're going to be, especially, in this area. We have some beautiful new communities that are opening up. It's better than trying to stay home and not doing it successfully and ending up in a nursing home that you didn't choose. So come up with a plan. And then memory care assisted living is more expensive than traditional assisted living. Primarily, memory care is a secure part of an assisted living. If somebody is exit seeking, or if they are prone to wandering and getting lost, anytime somebody lacks the safety awareness to be left by themselves, they would benefit from living in a memory care where the staffing ratio is higher. Again, these numbers are higher now than even when I created the slide, which was probably about 6 months ago. I would say memory care in this area is probably closer to 10. Although, again, it's location driven. So if somebody like Dedham has some less expensive options and is not that far from here. And then here are some people that can help you. Senior care consultants. That's me. Aging life care professional. So I am not a nurse. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a financial planner. And I am not an elder law attorney. I do pretend that I am all of these things in my conversations, but I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not qualified. That's above my pay grade. So if somebody needs a social worker or a nurse, if you don't have a support system and you want to hire somebody to help coordinate all this for you, you need an aging life care professional. We know them as geriatric care managers. GCMs. That's what but they rebranded. And I don't like it because it sounds like they're life care professionals who are aging. Aging life care, elder law attorneys are really important. Almost everyone I talk to, I recommend visit with an elder law attorney. If you don't have one, I can help you find one. Financial planners, figure out how to spend your money, to maximize downsizing specialists. I love talking about this. Most people don't even know. There's a whole new profession that has popped up in the last decade called senior move managers. They're like miracles, and thank God I'm not one of them. It's a level of patience that I don't have, but my parents have moved several times. And so the move manager comes in, takes a look at the new space where you're going and your furniture and measures everything and helps you figure out what's going. If it's not going, is it worth money? Is it worth selling on auction? Is it worth doing consignment? Is it worth donating? Do we throw it away? Oh, yeah. And some of the stuff's going to go to the kids. The move manager will help you do all that. I can't imagine sitting and doing that with my parents. We would kill each other, or maybe they would just kill me. But either way, I can't imagine that. So you can hire people and then they'll pack you up. They'll put everything in the boxes. The moving company will come and take it away. And the best part is they'll meet the moving company in your new home and they will unpack and they hang up your pictures, your toothbrush and the toothbrush. Again, it's not everything's where you're going to be able to find it, but you're not walking into a bunch of boxes. And it's the stuff you chose. It's really, and a move can happen in a day. They can have it all planned out. Your kids take you out for lunch, and then you go to your new apartment and it's all set up. It's not as smooth as I'm making it seem, but amazing resources. There's a website, the National Association of Senior Move Managers. All the stuff's on my website, or if you call me, you can find a downsizing specialist. The ASAP stands for Aging Service Access Point, which ASAP is in this area, Springwell. So Springwell, elder services, financial paying help. There's a number of resources, Meals on Wheels through the ASAP, and then your Council on Aging has a number of resources, including me. They often refer to me, which is great. But home care companies, learning about the aid and attendance, getting access to the VA agent in the town, all transportation, Meals on Wheels, all that stuff. The Council on Aging is a really important tool for learning how to stay home, for making it so that you can stay home. And then options counselors, SHINE representatives, they can help you understand your Medicare benefits and insurance and navigating the doctors and all of that. I can't even explain what they accurately do, but they're important and they help you with the insurance stuff. So this is all on my website. We have the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. That website has the nursing home, oh, sorry, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid has the nursing home compare website. If nursing homes look like they might be, or there's a probability they might be in the future, choosing the right one is a big deal. There is a huge difference between a good nursing home and a bad one. I'll do my little phone jig. A huge difference. Huge. So if it looks like a nursing home might be needed, and there are only two reasons. One is if your care can't be met anywhere else, and the other is if you can't afford the care you need in anywhere else, then a nursing home comes onto the radar. You want to do your research in advance. You want to get on wait lists in advance, because that's just how it is. You can just believe me. So that's where, again, I offer consultation. I walk people through that website. My goal is to help keep people out of nursing homes forever, for as long as possible, but acknowledge that it may be needed. The Aging Service Access Points, the Frail Elder Waiver Program is one of the Mass Health waiver programs that does help people stay at home. People who are financially eligible can qualify for up to 40 hours of in-home care to stay at home. Now, one of the problems is just because you qualify doesn't mean they can staff it. The Council on Aging, the councils on aging. I always say, people say council on agings. Councils on aging, the VA aid and attendance, housebound allowance. I mentioned that earlier. You can go through the VA representative in your town. There are also other resources that offer free consultation, so you can learn about your qualification, your criteria, and then the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs is the governing body for assisted living communities. Fun website if you want to go visit it. But I suggest that you connect with me and your council on aging to get a feel of what resources do you need, and then get on the right track and just head in the right direction, and one foot in front of the next. If your goal is to stay home, put a plan in place, but have a backup plan too. That way you're not one of my crisis calls. Any questions? Yes.
About, you know, I'm one of those people who wants to take it as long as I can. But, you know, the idea of going to assisted living when I don't need someone to cook for me is not appealing. Does it ever make sense to do a sort of transitional move, knowing that moving can be difficult, but like moving into an apartment? So you get rid of all the yard work and the house responsibilities
Yeah.
before you maybe take that next step?
Yeah, so the question is, you may not need full assisted living. So is there something kind of in between, a transitional or moving into an apartment? I think that the initial downsize is always a good idea. My parents moved from the house that they raised me into a condo, and then from a condo to an independent living. And then from an independent living, well, COVID, my dad moved into an assisted living, and my mom moved to a property with us. And now she's moved into the assisted living where he is, but she doesn't need any care. She has real bad arthritis in her hands and she can't open any jars. So having somebody around to open things for her is great, but she doesn't miss the cooking. She doesn't miss that stuff, but she doesn't need any care. So there are a number of options. I think that we were talking just before this that there are homes, modular homes. I've heard the term granny pod, which I really don't like, but they're like small homes that are designed to age in place in 55 plus communities. You can absolutely move to one of those. Just don't think that it's your forever solution. It might be, but you still have to go through all of this just to make sure that it is. So there are independent living communities where you can move in. Not all 3 meals a day are included. Maybe you have an option of 30 meals a month, and you can use them however you want. And they have a few different restaurants, and they have the housekeeping and the utilities and all the things except for the help is available. And so there are those communities. There are buy-ins. You can buy into an independent living community, a continuing care. I'm a big advocate of doing the downsize and doing it in multiple parts. There are some people that absolutely never want to move again. This is the last, they never want to move again. And that's an entirely different tract. But many people moving out of your home and into an intermediate or a transitional can be really awesome. You should see some of these places. Yes.
For the guy carrying soup up the stairs, did you recommend a dumbwaiter?
I did not, because he wasn't dumb. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't because they were in their 90s. And they should not, home was not, there were a number of other reasons why home was not, they were an accident waiting to happen. And no amount of stair lifts or LVM, no, that's left with vertical platforms via, would have made them safe.
And my real question is, what is your assessment of the home care giving industry in terms of quantity and quality and overall service?
What is my assessment into the home care industry? Well, do I give you the real answer? Do I give you the one because I'm holding a microphone? I think that the whole senior care industry is needing to be overhauled. I have no idea what that's going to look like. Home care is really tough. It's a really tough industry to be in. It's really hard to staff. That's the biggest issue. You have good caregivers, but maybe you don't have enough clients for them. And then they're going to leave and go to another home care company. Or maybe you have all these caregivers and you can't get the staff for them. You can't get good staff, people that speak English, or, there's a number of things. Home care's really hard. It doesn't work as well as most people think it's going to, which is why I get so many calls for people who can't stay home, and that was their goal. Yes.
A follow-up on that, I think that it's not just home care, but even in some of these facilities, the care, the assisted care facilities and then going into the nursing home are having trouble also getting good care. Would you agree?
Yes. So the question is, is staffing an issue across the board?
One of my concerns is that until you actually are in a facility and living there for a certain period of time, I know there's some in the South who will actually allow you to come in and stay so many nights. I don't think you really get a sense of what it's about. So that kind of scares me. So my question to you is, are there organizations currently that are actually kind of rating a lot of these facilities that you can go to and kind of look at, like, 20 assisted care facilities in your area and what their ratings are and their caregivers, that sort of thing, that you have a better grasp. It's not as superficial going in.
Right. So the follow-up question is, is staffing an issue across the board? And then how do you know, can you try it out, or until you're in it, how do you know? Well, one of the answers to that is this is what I do for a living. So the answer is yes and no. There is no rating system for assisted livings. The Medicare.gov website just put a listing of all the assisted livings in the state, but it just has basic information, the size of the building, and the owner. It doesn't have any. So we're in our 14th year. I've been spending all this time getting a sense of what the differences are in these communities. And rather than a rating, what I help you do is come up with questions that are specific to your concerns. And you can talk to those communities. The staffing turnover is high. So if you don't need to look for another 5 years, I would get a sense of the building, get a sense of the location and not so much about the staffing right then because it's gonna turn over. One thing I wanna say, and this is a totally separate conversation, is that an assisted living is not a facility. A facility is a medical model of care, or maybe a prison. An assisted living is a residence. It's an apartment building or a condo. So we use the word community or residence because I don't want to move to a facility ever, no matter how nice you tell me it is. But a residence or a community really is what it is. They do have a number of these, almost all of them, the ones that are rentals, have a short-term program. It's usually the minimum is 30 days. And honestly, I think you need that much to see. I have a lot of clients that they don't need it now, but they go in for 30 days or they go in for a winter stay to see what they like and what they don't like. So when they do need it, they're ahead of the game. I have to be honest, most of the people that do that choose to stay. They don't go back home. Almost always. So I don't know if that helps answer your question or put your mind at ease. But I've been doing this again 14 years, but even before that, I was doing this in the assisted living. And I can only count on one hand the amount of times I had somebody come for a short-term stay and then go back home. So if that tells you anything, it tells you that they like it there and they're happy. It's easier to staff a congregate. It's easier to put staff in to cover a whole lot of people in one area than it is to get home care aides out. So even if, and some of these places will have backup staffing from the home care agencies. So in an assisted living, staffing might be low, but it isn't non-existent. And it's not that bad. Almost all of the assisted livings that I work with are fantastic, even if they're running a little short. It depends on your personality and where you live, but most of the time I talk to people with these concerns, and then when I follow up, they're happy. That's why I love my job so much. Yeah, you had a question?
You answered that.
I answered it. Well, I was psychic. Any other questions? If you do have any, give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian and Michelle. Their information is in your packet, and I know Michelle brought some information as well about her company. And we will be, the preview is we'll also be talking about assisted livings next week and independent living differences. And then the next week, we'll talk about other options like the granny pods, accessory dwelling units, co-housing and shared housing. So hopefully you found this informative, and if we could just thank Brian and Michelle, and we'll see you next week.